Hello, I'm Cat, and the Copper Age update is now available for all Minecraft platforms, and it contains 73 new features, the most of any drop we've had so far. And even if you don't interact with Copper, there are lots of changes you'll notice, such as the new armor value and the changes they've made to villages and vibrant visuals. And so today I want to go through every single feature and change in this drop and explain them all to you, because I think that so many are massive and will represent a quality of life change. But let's get started with the big feature, the Copper Golem. This is the return of a mob vote loser, and it's technically our first time having that because of the definition of mob vote, but what's interesting is the Copper Golem is a brand new utility mob which can be crafted really easily. You won't have any struggles for remembering this recipe, and it's even easier actually, because all you have to do if you want to is craft it sideways and it will still work just fine. So placing some pumpkins next to some blocks will give us Copper Golems of all different types. Interestingly, the Copper Golems will also come free with a copper chest, which means it might actually be efficient to make a Copper Golem even if you barely intend to use them. Why is that? Because the copper chest is not just a new version of a chest. Okay, to you the player it is. It's a metal sounding chest, but it also represents what the Copper Golem will do, because they can sort items from any copper chests of any level oxidization into nearby regular chests, up to 10 chests at a time per Copper Golem, which means that Copper Golems will go through your mess, because let's be honest, you're making one in Minecraft right now, and they'll sort it into nice orderly stacks across different chests, and I absolutely love this behavior from them. And so Copper Golems will sort items into chests that are empty, containing the same item that they're holding, and as a result you'll get nice orderly stacks, which is exactly what you're looking for, or at least it's what I'm looking for, which is really, really nice. Also, the Copper Golem will eventually, they're not a entirely maintenance-free mob, because as a Copper Golem ages, like every other copper block, they will slowly oxidize, and once they've reached full oxidization and go through another stage of it, they'll become a statue. You can then wax these statues, or you can indeed scrape them to bring them back to slightly less oxidization, and if you scrape them one more time, you'll be able to bring back a mob, effectively creating a mob that comes from a statue. Very, very interesting behavior there. But yeah, Copper Golems are a very fun little thing, because they exist as a cute mob that will help you, or they become a statue, which you can use for all sorts of silly things. Crossing the road, doing star jumps. You have the choices of what your Copper Golems gets to be for you, and I have just one piece of advice, which is I would think carefully about this new sentient mob that we have. You know, you could treat him poorly, you could use the C word on him all the time, and you could do that, or you could decide to be better than this, and you could realize that it's your decision about how nice you get to be to these guys, and that's what I'm going to remind myself. I'm also going to remind myself that lightning rods will come in 4 different variants now, as opposed to 1 like before, and lightning rods will oxidize over time, unlike other blocks. This is important to know. Your existing Minecraft world's lightning rods will slowly be oxidizing, so if you have a copper house that's fully waxed and you have one of these, you will now need to wax it as well, because if you don't, it will slowly oxidize. Pro tip. Speaking of pro tips, let's talk about copper tools. This is a huge change that many people were asking for, and so what's the good news? Well, copper tools have come into the game, and they represent a brand new tier of tools that go between stone and iron. How much better than stone and how much worse than iron are they? Well, in terms of durability, I made this fun chart back when they put it into previews that shows you that it's exactly halfway between, and when it comes to effectiveness, it's also roughly halfway between too. Here is me using a stone pickaxe. As you can see, it's like, as slow as a stone pickaxe is. Here is me using a copper pickaxe. As you can see, just a little bit faster. If you happen to find a bunch of copper and haven't found iron yet, because iron is of course still better in both durability and in terms of damage and effectiveness, if you haven't found an iron pickaxe, if you haven't found any iron yet or enough to use, copper is a perfect in-between tool for most varieties. It's worth mentioning that it's in between for everything besides the sword, where a copper sword will deal the exact same damage as a stone one. Here is a stone sword, here is a copper sword, they both deal 5 damage, and all you need to know is that as a result, if you care about durability per sword, the copper one's worth making, but otherwise save it for your axe, your pickaxe, or indeed your armor, because you can make it to actually gear yourself up, and copper armor will be effective somewhere between leather and iron. Again, it represents an in-between tier. It's not better than anything that exists, and I would argue it makes leather fully worthless, because it is the one thing that it is better than, but leather was already harder to get than iron. It's certainly harder to get than copper, and so as a result, wear copper armor and slowly watch as you get more and more style. By the way, copper armor and tools do not oxidize, they will always stay orange, at least for now, but given how the lightning rod went, went, it's not impossible that changes in the future. Speaking of things that change in the future, copper armor is crafted as so. You need ingots, not blocks, making it very, very affordable. And yes, the copper horse armor cannot be crafted. You have to find it in loot chests like iron and gold armor. But unlike iron and gold, and indeed diamond, it will be a pretty low tier form of gear, and so if you want to put it on, feel free, you're just not going to get much value out of it. So speaking of being free, let's get out of here and let's go to the next section with all of these wonderful things, because the copper nugget is a brand new thing we'll get where you can take your copper ingot from before and turn it into nuggets. Why do you want copper nuggets? Well, sometimes it's nice just to divide things into 9, right? But second of all, the reason you would want this is because you can craft all sorts of different things. Here is the recipe for a copper torch. It's a regular torch recipe with a single copper nugget, making it very affordable to make green torches should you want them. And honestly, I like the green torches a lot. These green torches will look different depending on whether you're on Java or Bedrock. Right now, that will change in the future, so keep that in mind, but they're delightful looking on either, in my opinion, and they represent a really cool little change that you could use, for example, to have a different set of torches leading you to the rare structures that you find. There's so many cool possibilities for copper torches. I love them. You can also use copper torches to make yourself a copper lantern, which, you know, has all the oxidization levels. By the way, the reason there are so many features in this drop is because when they add just the single copper lantern, there's 4 different versions of it for oxidization, and then you can wax the lamps or indeed not wax the lamps, which is just kind of crazy, but important to know. There's also the copper chain recipe. I actually really like this, especially in conjunction with the lamp. And then we've got the copper bar recipe, which you can use to, like have a cheaper version of iron bars. Iron bars are so ridiculously expensive if you don't have an iron farm, and copper bars are going to be very affordable. So if you like this texture and don't need it to be super white or grey, then there is some great news for today. And so let's now move on to the next and perhaps the best feature. The shelves, I think, are the sort of thing that for 20% of Minecraft players are the best item in this drop by far. Mojang claimed they had no idea that people would use them to do all sorts of funky things, but then they showed off how many funky things people have built with them. There are so many different ways you can use these for architectural bonuses because they effectively represent a horizontal slab. I have no doubt that 80% of these that will be used by experienced Minecraft players are just to have these funky kind of half slabs, but if you want to use them for their intended purpose, as I'm a big believer that you should, let's talk about how that works. A single shelf stores 3 items, and if you click an item, it will swap it with what's in your hotbar. So here is my axe. I can swap it for a pickaxe, or I can swap my copper nuggets indeed, and you can do this across all of your hotbar if you'd like to by simply looking at the slot you'd like to replace. This means that it's an item frame, but instead of having to punch something out of the item frame and getting it back in, you simply swap it, which makes it really good. But if you power it using redstone, it gets even better. When a shelf is powered, you'll swap all 3 of the items with the last 3 items in your hotbar, allowing you to have, say, 3 tools or 3 handy items like, say, potions for a fight or something like that. This is incredible, but it gets even better. If you combine 2 or 3 shelves together, you can swap your entire hotbar at once. This is incredible. I really cannot stress this enough. This is the sort of thing that will revolutionize how fighting bosses and stuff like that goes. Inventory organization has gotten easier on 2 fronts today, and yeah, it's worth mentioning you can use these shelves with droppers and hoppers to continuously move items around if you want to. And so do you want to? I think I broke the entire system. Speaking of breaking the entire system, shelves are a great decorational block, and so this is where I think a lot of their value will come from. I'm going to be using them as a way to spell things out because you can put free banners in there, but your list of possibilities here are endless. This is a classic OG Minecraft feature of giving us something that is simple, yet allows us to have so much customization. Speaking of customization, one of the easiest ways you used to be able to do that was dyes, and dyes have a brand new texture. These are officially for accessibility, because effectively before, if you were colorblind, let's imagine you are right now, it's hard to tell apart which of these there are, but if you just remember the shape, you'll be able to tell cactus dye apart from lapis lazuli, from white dye, etc. This does have the interesting side effect of meaning that when you do make white dye from lapis, you randomly get this piece of brown paper from nowhere, or indeed, I don't understand where it comes from, but if we ignore the realism concerns, it does make it really easy to tell what's a dye and what's something else, because they all have unique textures, so great news for accessibility. This is a win for accessibility. Mojang has a lot of losses when it comes to making the game worse for everyone to make it better for 1%. This makes the game better for everyone, in my opinion, because I like these new textures, and if you don't, then okay, never mind, I guess. So now we've also got, as well as all of those main changes, a bunch of miscellaneous ones, that's definitely how you pronounce that, in this update. So let's talk about how 1.21.110, the 10th minor update for 1.21, is going to change things. So first of all, we have the copper trapdoor recipe taking 4 ingots instead of 6. The old recipe is now used by copper bars, so if you try to play 6 in a row, you won't get copper trapdoors. But interestingly, because of a bug that we, again, as you know at the time of recording, it's hard to spot, because of a bug, you actually will get 2 copper trapdoors for less money, it looks like right now, so that could be a win. We also have the fact that the regular chain has been renamed to the iron chain, because it's not the only chain in town anymore. A very fun little change, if you ask me. And if you want to know what other changes they've made, they've got this brand new accessibility toggle for hiding sky flashes. This will stop the big purple flashes in the end. They are making lots of changes to how the end looks in Vibrant Visuals, so if you are playing with it, you'll notice that. You'll also notice that Vibrant Visuals has all of these changes made, colored text on signs, the screen effect in the Nether portal, it's really, really cool stuff. But the biggest one that you'll notice if, you have a PC is the fact that your max render distance will go from 24 chunks up to 28. That's nice, if you ask me. Yeah, this is a really cool little bonus, and it doesn't have much of an effect on performance, but it has a huge effect on how playable Survival is. I hope they continue to up performance as they improve things. Speaking of performance, your combat performance is going to change, you might think, based on how you look at, say, these leggings versus these. Right now, the only way that most players tell how good armor is by looking at their armor bar. If you don't know, every armor bar represents 8% when it's a full one, and so that means that these diamond leggings will give me 12% more protection than these ones. However, there is a second value to consider now, which is that these leggings will give me 6 armor, as opposed to these giving me 3, but it will also give me +2 armor toughness. And going up the next tier of boots, you can see that Netherite will give you an extra armor toughness. What is armor toughness? So I could be really obtuse with you here and say, well, all you've got to do is check the Minecraft wiki and you'll find out that this calculation will tell you perfectly. But to simplify it down as much as we can, for really high damage attacks, for low damage attacks it's the same. Netherite and diamond armor will protect the same from a 1 damage attack, but if you have, say, a 30 damage attack, then diamond armor will reduce that attack down to 15 damage, while netherite armor will reduce it down to 13 damage. So for very heavy attacks, armor toughness is a big deal, and so diamond armor, you could argue, has gotten better than upper armor, but this is a hidden value that's just being exposed for the public, so now you know that diamond armor is better. It hasn't actually gotten any better, but it might change how you think about things. Speaking of changes to how you think about things, pick block will now distinguish between light block variants, which seems like it makes no sense. Like, what is a light block toy cat? And the answer is it's the only block you can't find in creative. You have to use the give at S command. So I'm going to give myself a light block, because if you'll believe it, this is in fact a creative world, and if I give myself the light block 10, then I have a block that I can use to set the light level to that. If I go into creative though, you can see that I can actually pick block all of these from here, and I'll be able to pick different levels of light, so I can have a light level 15, for example, or a light level 0. These are really useful for custom map makers because you can't see them, even in creative, unless you're holding them, but you can use them to alter light levels to make it so underneath things where there shouldn't be light, there still is going to be some. Oh, and you can change it by just like that if you want to as well. Very, very handy and great for just individually changing light. Oh, there's a bunch of light along these as well. Super fun. Speaking of super fun, I would like to bring up the fact that foxes will now consider honey as a food item. Look at this guy. He's running away with my honey. Copper blocks and oxidation variants are now ordered correctly in the creative inventory. This is a fun painting that I figured we had to use anyway. But basically, it used to be that when you searched in the creative inventory, it would show the oxidized or the weathered before exposed, which didn't make any sense because weathered was more exposed. It's one of those tiny just changes in Bedrock that has been fixed, because obviously we're talking mostly about Bedrock. A lot of these minor changes are specific to Bedrock, although all the major ones are on both Java and Bedrock. Really, really fun thing is that they mostly have these features at the same time for both platforms, but if you are on Bedrock, you'll notice that villagers can now open and close copper doors. This is great. It's also true on Java, which is really nice. Sometimes you get them trapped in some very weird situations with this, but it means that you are in a place where you can have a copper door in your house and let villagers in and out. which actually might be bad if you don't like that. Also, how did that just happen right here? Anyway, speaking of things that just happened, we also have a huge change for technical creators, which is custom biomes. This is incredible. Custom biomes can now be configured, and you can actually make these yourself. So I love the idea of Minecraft having more biomes, and I've been working on a custom biome pack, but loads of creators have just been releasing biome add-ons that suck because they aren't actually biomes. They're just world features, so they'll randomly appear and disappear, and they feel wrong. But, you know, having custom biomes is a big enough draw for marketplace add-ons that they don't care that it works correctly. I've been trying to work on it forever, and it's so cool that we can now actually have functional custom biomes. Super hype, and that represents my favorite of the features. If you want to know my favorite of the original 73, I think it would have to be, you know, despite the fact that I'm not a huge builder, I think it has to be the shelves, because it's this beautiful fusion. Oh, you can't put them in the shelf. Oh, there we go. Yeah. It's this beautiful fusion of functionality with building. I think that so many of these building blocks are just like, it's another block but changed, and that's nice for the people using it, but I love that we have this beautiful way to combine them together. And so, what do I think of this update overall? Honestly, it's a really decent one. The Copper Drop, the Copper Age update, is one of the best we've seen in the new formula, and if you're curious as to when we'll be seeing the next one, shockingly enough, the answer is perhaps as soon as later today or tomorrow. There are going to be snapshots and previews starting for that with all of its aquatic features, but for now, enjoy the Copper Age, enjoy getting all of its features, because I know I'm going to. Thank you for watching, I hope you all enjoyed, and I'll see you tomorrow. Goodbye.